The much better long-term solutions are looking at improving the ecosystem as a whole with the macrophytes and other things, and reducing nutrients before they get to the lake. So stormwater improvements, wastewater treatment improvements, improving wetlands along the lake so they can take up more nutrients. Those will be a much better long-term solution. Yeah?
So they decided to put any kind of predatory fish in there that likes carp?
No, because of the threatened June sucker. That's an issue actually with the northern pike. That was introduced illegally about 15-ish years ago. And thankfully the population has not taken off, but the computer modeling on northern pike from other water bodies shows that if it was left unchecked, it would become way worse than the carp situation. Because carp don't actually eat other fish. I mean, occasionally I think they ingest them, but they're primarily herbivores. Northern pike are piscivore, right? They eat other fish only. So DWR is very careful about introducing new species without very careful consideration of the ramifications.
You see it every time you buy a license. You transfer fish over here.
Oh yeah,
or you can get a huge ticket.
Yeah, not worth it. There was Strawberry Reservoir once. I forget what the species was. Something happened. It wasn't carp. It was something else. I don't think it was carp. But like 20 years ago or something, they rotenome the entire reservoir.
Oh yeah.
And just killed it all off. What's chub? Okay. Killed everything off and had to start from scratch.
Yep.
People have asked, why don't we just do that at Utah Lake? The number that I heard, I don't remember who gave us this number, but it was 3 times the annual world supply of rotenome to do the same thing at Utah Lake.
Really?
Oh yeah, because apparently it has to do with Utah Lake's dispersion, with how shallow it is and how much surface area there is. It's different than if you have a deeper water body like Strawberry. Plus, I don't know about Strawberry and how they were so successful, but you all know, like we've got Provo River, AF River, we have over 100 inflows to the lake. Most of them are small, but carp are everywhere, right? So how are we going to guarantee that that's actually going to do it all? Plus, you have the issue of the threatened species. If we were to kill them off too, that's a big problem, right? There's about 50,000 estimated June sucker back in the lake, all the way up from 300 in the 1990s. However, people say, well, there's a fish hatchery, isn't there? Well, fish hatcheries have problems. This year, I just heard from our biologist last year that they had, not this year, last year, they had some genetic issues. The fish weren't living long enough to be able to be brought down to the lake. And there's also issues with feeding that can happen. So a hatchery is not a perfect solution. So it's challenging logistically, and it's also very expensive to try and do some kind of permanent treatment without having a ramification on the rest of it. So don't tell my boss I said this. It's very unlikely carp will be removed entirely ever. Our boss is very optimistic, and I admire him for it, and we're all following his charge that we're going to get rid of every single carp eventually. But if you talk to any of the biologists, they're all going to express doubt that that will ever occur. I mean, at least with current technology methods, right? There's research being done that could potentially change that. Okay, long-term look, just some things to keep in mind moving into the future. I've already talked a lot about partnering across, whoops, wrong button, there we go. Partnering with various agencies and organizations. I've hit a lot on the fact that we're trying to seek additional grants. Right now, we actually have applications in currently, and we're waiting to hear back on over $1 million to help with different things at the lake, everywhere from vegetation and shoreline to improving the state park. This is one I wanted to mention in particular. Yep, I'll hit on the next slide. State legislative appropriations, as I mentioned earlier to you, there's potentially some nature center funds happening. We're working right now with Congressman Owens. I think I mentioned this last year, and we did not get the funding. That was after the presentation last year. We got turned down. We got ranked highly, but didn't get it. But the good news is that likely increases our odds of getting it this year. And that would be almost $3 million specifically for recreation improvements. So one thing we hope to do with that is to work with Utah County to do master plans for each of their 3 access points at the lake. So Lincoln Beach Marina, the Knolls, and Sandy Beach. Because the county doesn't want to just willy-nilly do improvements because we had an idea. They want to have a cohesive plan to guide their projects at the lake. Donations, we don't really hit much on that there. Okay, other updates. Some legislative updates. This year you may hear some things in the news. I haven't seen an article on it yet. I don't think it's a big deal, but there is a bill out there, HB 520. It'll mention Utah Lake and the authority. All it's really requiring is that we potentially do more reporting to the Department of Natural Resources, which is cool. We can do that. We already write reports. I'll write another one, I guess. We are doing amendments to our own statute, the Utah Lake Authority. Nothing fancy. We're doing some housekeeping. There's some parts of the bill that aren't very clear, like like there's a section on the membership of our board that was written really weird the first time, and so we're cleaning up that language, and a few other things. But no surprises. We haven't seen anything yet in legislation for Utah Lake this year that's massive. Last year I did mention there was a bill called SB 270, the Utah Lake and Great Salt Lake study. That study has started. Utah Division of Forestry, Fire, and State Lands is overseeing it, and we're working with them on it. That's basically taking all of the research that's been done at the lake and all of the plans and suggestions that have happened, and they're condensing it down into okay, we're kind of done with research, which we're not. Just our legislators want us to be done with research. But anybody who does natural resources management knows you can't stop researching. You have to keep working and researching at the same time, because new ideas come, new data comes. But that will come up with an implementation plan for here's how to, dare I say the word, fix the lake, was the legislator's goal. Luckily, we were able to guide that bill so that it wasn't more damaging, but basically we think it can be helpful because the team that was hired is going out and pulling all of these researchers on carp and on phragmites and on the shallow nature of the lake and dredging and all of these things, and pulling together and saying, okay, what actually needs to be done, and that will guide FFSL's efforts and our efforts as we manage the lake. One fun update, this is the one I was talking about before with Geneva Steel. There was a study done by Eddie Cadet at UVU a couple of years ago that showed there was potentially no lasting effects from PCBs. PCB is a remnant chemical from Geneva Steel, from what I understand. They did the sampling this summer, and the fish samples are in the lab right now because his initial research showed that advisory was no longer needed. So some of you may have heard about the don't eat too much carp or catfish out of Utah Lake. That's because of the PCBs. There's a strong likelihood from what data he gathered that the outcome of this will be removing that advisory. So that would be a really great win for the lake as well if that were to occur. So hopefully, they didn't give me an exact timeline, but I'm hoping by spring sometime we know the answer on that. Yeah?
They have that tailings pond, or I don't know what they call it.
Over in Vineyard, yeah.
Over by Living Marina.
Mhm.
They got plans for that, or?
The city's talked about trying to do different things, Vineyard City. Like at one point, they even said like, hey, could we turn that into a marina? I don't know. There isn't anything finalized. They have a permit in with Forestry, Fire, and State Lands, but I don't recall exactly what their plan was for the tailings ponds.
So that'd be something, that's city property right there?
No, it's sovereign lands. They would actually have to do work on the, because it falls below the high water mark. Portions of it are owned privately, but there is a sovereign land division for it as well. So I don't know for certain on it, but I know Vineyard City has a plan of some kind.
Well, if you've been over there, there's lots of slag and the bottoms of the kettle, the round thing.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure there's gonna need to be some cleanup, for sure. Okay, the state park. I wanted to, jeez, hit the wrong button. It's not my clicker. I'm not used to it. No, it's a great clicker. Thank you. This is one in particular I wanted to mention. Steve Wolf and I are partnering to do a master plan for Utah Lake State Park this next fiscal year. So this is something that we'll try and provide opportunities for you all and others to be able to provide input on. But basically, if you're not familiar with the term master plan, it's putting down on paper with some basic designs and basic information around a timeline and funding what you want to do for a park. And the goal of that is a couple different reasons, but the main reason I mentioned with the county master plans is to provide a consistent vision for what should the marina look like, so that we don't put a parking lot where we're going to need a campground or something. That was a past management idea that luckily didn't happen. So we're going to be working on this the coming fiscal year, and that's something that I think the sailing community would be welcome to provide input on. Yeah?
Is there any mention about a yacht club?
Yeah, I was thinking.
Any mention in the master plan?
Yeah.
Well, we haven't started yet.
Well, mention it, okay?
And when you say yacht club, tell me what you mean, because when I hear yacht club, I think of y'all. You're
Well,
like a
that's-
yacht club. You're a group of people who like yacht.
That's what we're here for.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think a good share of us would like to see a yacht club where we really promote the boating experience on Utah Lake.
Sure. Dan, I learned this name. I got another name. What's up?
There is a yacht club, it's called Utah Lake Yacht Club.
Yes.
It's pretty small right now, has been much larger in the past, and is looking to grow again. The idea there is to promote sailing on Utah Lake and to share the costs of maintaining the boats and thus share the use of the boats.
All right, and I would encourage, I know this could be a heavy lift, but if at some point the yacht club ever wanted to go like 501c3 status,
We already are.
well, okay, perfect, then you should be applying for the small grants program to help with that. For sure, talk with me about that, Dan.
Okay.
Are they
So-
looking for adding more docks?
So far, Steve has been open to discussing quite a variety of ideas. Additional slip rentals is something Melanie and I have worked with Steve on, and that is a part of one of the grants we submitted, is to try and get funding for that. I can't promise it's gonna happen super fast, because grant cycles, we apply right now for money that would only be available to spend July 1st, and then we're on a deadline to spend within a calendar year typically, within budgets. So we usually have to kind of break things into manageable projects, but we also don't want to start doing a whole bunch of projects without having the plan in place first. So right now, we submitted a grant request with broad statements about improving some asphalt, repairing or shoring up some of the jetty work, boat slips. I think we also put in an additional non-motorized boat dock, kind of like the damaged one on the Provo River. Or it's pretty basic, we want to do something nicer out there to draw paddle boarders away from the marina, the actual boat ramps. There was something else. Oh, we talked about potentially a storage shed for some of the equipment the Utah Lake Authority utilizes, and then some life jacket loaner stations. That was one thing Josh really wanted me to do, is run our program here, because his is inside the visitor center and sometimes it's locked up.
Yeah.
But we wanted to build, I think we talked about building one station right out here by the main launch ramp, and then one out by the outer marina too. So that's right now, all Steve and I decided to kind of bite off at the moment, is try and look at some of the main basic needs. But the point of the master plan is to try and design out, I don't know, I'd be curious to get feedback on an idea I've had. I haven't shared this with Steve yet. I think I shared it with Melanie. What if the outer marina could be dredged and formed into an actual second, like, marina with a boat ramp, additional slip rentals, etc.? I'm seeing some nodding heads.
That costs a pile.
What was that?
I said, I bet that costs a pile.
So it definitely would cost a lot, but again, that's the other benefit, is not only providing a vision with the master plan, but it provides a schedule and guidance on timing and when we need to seek funding and how much. And so we can put a price tag on, hey, let's say that's a plan we put in there, expanding that outer marina or dredging that marina, putting in docks. Probably, I would guess that's like a 5 to 10 years from now is when that would be pursued, probably. I'm totally shooting from the hip. But if we see that and we say, okay, in 10 years, if it costs that much now, inflation is estimated this much, okay, it's gonna be, I don't know, let's just say $10 million. Then we know we need to go start seeking $10 million in advance to store up and be able to do that project in 10 years. So that's the benefit of getting a master plan in place, is it allows us to provide a vision for the projects, a timeline to follow, and identifying funding sources and amounts needed to pursue a cohesive project instead of little itty-bitty projects as we think of them, and then maybe they conflict with each other. So my hope is that by the end of next fiscal year, we'll have that plan done, and then we can start applying. Honestly, my goal would be to work annually with Steve to seek outside funding sources to really start ramping up the state parks and buildings and improve some of its maintenance
It would
issues.
be nice to have the sewer work, where you can pump your.
Oh my gosh, I didn't tell you guys about that.
I was gonna say,
So,
make sure you tell them.
I don't know yet, I'm supposed to find out any day, but I actually submitted a grant for that, an application, through the state, it's funded through the federal government, so that's part of the unknown right
Do
now.
you know what the matter with the one that's there?
What's that?
You know what's the matter with the one?
Honestly, we didn't even waste our time with figuring it out because it's actually 25 years old.
there? Oh,
We're paying for a brand new system to be installed. So we're waiting for the grant. To be honest, the price tag is not high. I think the total project, we estimated 20 grand. For the equipment's like $16,000. And then the rest is like some minor work to pay for, like shipping. Steve is donating in kind, his staff are gonna install it all, etc. So even if we don't get the grant, we're willing to fund it.
was that a pay, put a dollar in?
No.
No,
Steve and I do not want it to be paid. We want it to be open to the public.
Okay.
And the nice thing is, I don't know, did anybody ever try and use the little porta potty dump one on the asphalt? Probably not, because it's been broken even longer. We're gonna get rid of that because it's problematic.
Okay.
Apparently Josh had problems with park visitors thinking it was a trash can and they put other stuff in there. The new system will actually have an attachment for the hose where you can suck out right on site. So you don't have to take anything off your boat at all. It it's all done right on your
Oh,
mobile
cool.
system. So it's a much newer system than it was 25 years ago. So I appreciate you mentioning that because you give me a chance to, oh good, I did that. I took that feedback last year.
I used to have a houseboat, we can go over there to drain it, and, oh, it doesn't work.
Yep, yeah,
You
so
tell somebody to come to your
looks
house.
like we'll have to wait a little bit
200
longer.
square.
If I remember correctly, actually I don't remember because that one's funded federally. I don't know what the timing is of when it's available if we get it. But again, regardless, if we don't get that grant, the authority's gonna pursue that because that was a pain point we wanted to help address. So that's another improvement. That one and the one I mentioned with the asphalt and everything, those are the only current improvement plans we've been working with the park on until we get a master plan in place. The federal appropriation I already mentioned earlier with Congressman Owens, the two focuses of that, 3 million if we can get it, will be planning for recreation and then doing recreation improvements. For instance, one thing we considered is working with Saratoga Springs to either help with their section of trail they're trying to complete and or helping with their North Marina to try and help it move forward. However, they're still caught up on a permitting problem with the Army Corps of Engineers. So that project, has some funding in place, but it can't move forward until they resolve that permitting issue.
Did
Yeah.
they mention anything about food trucks or something down here?
I like that idea. Didn't Josh bring in somebody? It was Kona Ice, I think, just the ice
Yeah.
truck, right? They came in, I think, right, this past summer.
Regatta, yeah.
Well, and yes, and for the festival and regatta, we bring in food trucks for that, but that's something that we've considered. I don't think there's been like an active push to keep one in here all the time. I think back when I started, there was a hamburger joint, wasn't there? Like a hamburger trailer?
A little while, yeah.
Yeah, it's been, I think it may have been just before I came on that he wasn't doing it anymore. I think that's definitely something that could be considered as a part of it. Even for the master plan, there's stuff that I think could be really interesting to look at with this park. It has a lot of capabilities, I think. I think that was it, so we're kind of just in questions mode. So I appreciate you listening to everything I said. I'd be happy to take any of your questions, and I see a hand up already. So please, go right ahead.
So I was just kind of looking up some things.
Yeah.
And I know one of the things that's really confusing in Utah
Hey,
is
you're good.
you have a lot of different lakes, and they're all Utah lakes,
They are
and then there's a Utah lake.
in Utah County, in Utah. We're real good at original naming.
But I was like, I wonder how many other lakes are actually named after the state that they're in. And I went through all the lakes in the entire country, and I might have skipped one, but I did find an Oklahoma lake.
Okay.
And the other like 1,000 lakes or whatever actually have names, like I
Sure.
know that there's an idea of putting the name of the lake back to Lake Timpanogos.
Yeah.
Do we know anything about that progress in that direction?
Yeah, so that was an idea, I mean, I'm sure other people have talked about it, but probably the one you would find if you look for that online was Representative, well, now Senator Braegger. He's actually the legislator who created the Utah Lake Authority, and he served on the Utah Lake Commission before that. He wants to do it at some point. When I spoke with him about it last year, his opinion though is that we need to make some improvements at the lake because he considers renaming it a good thing in general because it gets rid of Utah. It also returns it to its actual original name from what we can tell, what Timpanogos Tribe and others called it. But he also sees it as a rebranding effort. And so if we're gonna go through all the effort of renaming everything to do with the lake, which is not a ton, but you know, there's a website, there's logos, there's signage that we'll have to go through it. He'd like it to be at a time when we finally have made some progress. My hope is the only progress really that needs to happen is the public's perception, which means it could happen a lot faster. But there isn't a set timeline on it. My guess would be we're probably still a few years from something like that being pursued. Makes me wonder too, I've never looked into it, but I wonder who actually named it Utah Lake, like which settler do we have to blame for that? Hopefully, my luck would be Brigham Young or something, but eventually. I personally, I like the idea. Yeah,
Because
and then I guess I handle it.
one of the other things is that whenever you look for news or other things, when you look at Utah Lake, it pulls up all the lakes in Utah. And
Yeah.
If you're trying to like bring attention to Utah Lake, it gets lost.
Sure. I agree with you. I've had trouble with that in search terms. I've learned though, quotation marks, quotation, Utah Lake quotation mark fixes that problem 9 times out of 10.
And so I was
Just
thinking,
tidbit.
you know, there could be a lot of people that don't even really understand Utah Lake exists.
Sure.
So it's
Well, and even with our agency's name, we often get people thinking we're over multiple Utah lakes because of the name. especially people from out of state. So there's definitely something to be said for awareness. On that note, I didn't actually talk about the advertising campaign. I'm so glad you said that. I thought I put it on the slides. One thing we're doing right now as an agency to try and address the perception issues of the lake is we're working on the first ever advertising like large scale advertising campaign for the lake. In the 8 years I've been here, I'll put, $100 on a Facebook ad or something, right? I've never done a large scale advertising campaign. To put in perspective what I mean by that, this is gonna be like a $200,000 to $300,000 ad campaign. And the whole focus of the campaign is a video and a series of billboards and some other graphics that basically make fun of us for not liking Utah Lake. Pointing out how ridiculous it is that people think the Utah Lake should be something else or that it's gross. A lot of people's opinions about the lake that are not positive are based on information that's just out of date. There's people who think the lake is the same way it was 5, 10, 50 years ago, and that's not accurate. So we got together with the Harmon Brothers firm, which is a local advertising firm out of Provo. They're the ones who did like the Squatty Potty viral campaign. What's the other one? Poopery. Some of these, if you look them up, they're quite humorous ads, and they helped us develop an ad about Utah Lake to be able to bring to people's attention that we need to love the lake for what it is instead of wanting it to be something it's not. So we're doing that. That's supposed to launch, I keep saying spring. I don't have a hard date because we actually made some edits to it. We changed it. My boss the other day, though, said March is our goal. So that'll be our first large-scale effort to try and target improving perceptions of the lake, in addition to all the other small things we do. The next stage, to your comment about Utah Lake and knowing which one people are talking about, our goal is potentially next year at soonest, but maybe a couple of years from now. Oh, no, sorry, never mind. He wants to actually pursue it. We're going to pursue a grant this year to start next year, doing an out-of-state campaign around awareness and trying to educate about the public and understanding that Utah Lake is an amenity that's here, because most people from out of Utah have not even ever heard of it. So there are several initiatives we're trying to kick off to start trying to address a lot of those pain points. I thought I had another idea.
Yeah, I noticed at certain times of the summer that you can't even come down here without having a mob of mosquitoes trying to kill you.
The midges.
Thanks for helping me out over there, Melanie. There are some mosquitoes. Most of the insects at the lake are actually midge fly.
Yeah,
Is the
see
main.
those too.
They don't bite you, but they are annoying as all hell.
Yeah, yeah,
They get all
their mouth,
over
their
you.
ears.
Unfortunately, this
They
is
get
one of
under
the
your hat.
I'm sorry?
They get under your hat.
Oh yeah, and in your mouth, everywhere.
Yeah, that's
This is
right.
one of the ecosystem problems with the lake, meaning, so I shouldn't say problems because that's the wrong mindset.
Birds
Slap,
like 'em.
slap my own wrist. The birds eat them, the fish eat them. They're a main part of the ecosystem right now.
Yeah.
So we
Well, you
can't
better
remove
promote
them
the
without
good.
drastically impacting other fish and avian species. That said, doesn't mean that couldn't change in the future. But it's also another one of those pain points of perceptions, right? Everybody thinks it's mosquitoes. That's one pain point to hit. The other is, this
Well,
is not Deer Creek. This is not, hold on,
Sometimes
just
it's
a
not
moment, please.
mosquito, sometimes it's
Can I
mosquito.
finish my statement?
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. I appreciate that. This is not like all of our high mountain water reservoirs that all the residents compare it to and want it to be like. It is a wetland. It's one of the few we have in Utah Lake. But they naturally have a thriving ecosystem. We have 226 species of birds. I think it's over a dozen species of mammals. The fish is 13, if I remember correctly, and I forget just how many insect species we have at Utah Lake. Signs of life is a good thing. It's showing that the lake is operating. Now, it's not operating the exact way we want it to, meaning not islands want it to. We want it to thrive and be healthy and safe for us too. So it is a thriving ecosystem, but it is also damaging, so we're trying to shift that. Eventually, one thing that could shift would be midge flies, potentially. Not in the short-term goals, I don't think. So for now, unfortunately, my answer is we have to wear some bug spray, pick the right time of day, and deal with it.
Better put
The
that,
biologist won't let me
you
kill
better
off.
put that in your commercial so people know.
Yes, it actually is in the commercial, yeah. A lot of things like that are. The other issue too is because they don't bite, they're not a public health concern. The county actually sprays for mosquitoes at Utah Lake regularly. They actually do a lot of research on when's the best time of year to try and treat to kill them before they even hatch. But the midge fly is not a public health concern because it doesn't bite, unfortunately.
And does the mosquito spray not affect them?
No, apparently not.
Huh.
Weird, huh?
Yeah.
Which is funny too, because like our herbicide that we use at the lake to treat the Phragmites, there's no such thing as like a plant specific. It just kills everything it touches. I don't know how the bug people got off lucky. Or unlucky, depending on how you're looking
Right,
at it.
any mosquito doesn't do anything.
Oh, right, yeah, like it feels like it doesn't do anything. And you gotta wear one of those, nets. No one should. Other questions?
For the spiders, normally, they go back, way back, is it just, we have a lot of spiders around the
Yeah.
docks, you know?
Yeah, I don't know too much about the spiders. I know Lincoln Point actually has a huge amount of them too, depending on the time of year when they all come out. We did a cleanup project, I think it was June, with the Chamber of Commerce, a bunch of business people. They were dressed appropriately for it, but they didn't really have a great experience because like every sagebrush they went between was covered in cobwebs and spiders. I don't know too much about it though. I'd have to ask our biologist.
Well, what we say is that the Great Salt Lake boats are often here.
I believe that. We can blame them. Doesn't Antelope Island have like a spider
The only
festival?
problem with that
That'd be
is-
a
Like that's actually an example of changing the perception though, right? Like they turned it into an event. People want to go to that thing, I guess.
Yeah, the big black spiders with the red butt on it, those come from the Great Salt Lake.
Do we not have any Great Salt Lake boaters in here? Is that how we're getting away with that?
No, we have one that snuck in.
Okay.
Well, we get-
I appreciate Great Salt Lake
We got
boaters.
these ones with this white button on it.
Oh, okay.
Well,
Yeah, we'll have to
so
look into it more.
Todd in this, I think it was this week or last week's newsletter, talked about bug bombing your boat.
Oh,
Okay.
So read that and
I like that.
Don't spread them around.
We need help with that, right? Okay, any other questions? Yeah?
I just not a question, but same thanks for what you're doing. I mean, I've been sailing out here for 15 years, and we can really see the difference from all the efforts that you're doing in this role. So just
Thank
thank you.
you. Thank you. Before I sit down, turn this off, I wanted to revisit the question that I put up on there. What can we do to help sailing and or water safety at the lake? I do still have a few items left over from last year that you guys gave me. I went and looked. I still have the note. I accomplished 4 of the 8 things.
awesome.
I didn't mention them all though. What were they? I actually pulled it up because I was like, I should reference that. What was it? So we're working on expanding the number of boat slips available potentially. We got the wind sensor in the middle of the lake. Oh, Wi-Fi's trying to interrupt me. Go away. The one was actually a question, which is funny because I should have gotten the answer for you last year, but I finally asked our biologist when I found the question again, which somebody asked when hatching season was on Bird Island to try and avoid interfering with the birds out there. The problem is, she said, it's kind of hard to tell. Most avian species breed and hatch March through May, but it kind of depends. Like the sandpiper that you'll find at Utah Lake actually does it later in the year. But broadly speaking, probably March to May might be a better time to avoid interfering with birds out on Bird Island, from what she said. The other one, unfortunately, I don't have a happy answer on, but I did find out the answer. You guys asked me last year about why aren't there buoys out on Bird Island? And I have asked 3 different individuals without telling them that I asked the 3 different individuals, and I got the same answer every time, which is because the Bird Island is a natural feature, not a man-made feature. If the state puts buoys on it, they're liable for any damage that occurs. And so risk management won't let Steve go put buoys on it because they don't want to get sued by somebody who said, I didn't see the sign, or you didn't put it out early enough. I know that y'all probably wouldn't be those people, but there are people who do that. So unfortunately, they're not going to believe it. That said, I think it'd be interesting to see if there's ways we can do other education around it, right? Like I think some better mapping might be of interest. I know that we haven't, what's it called? Bathymetry data, which is the word, you guys probably know this, I probably should tell you bathymetry is your sailors, never mind. I usually have to explain that word because I had to learn that
Wait,
word.
I don't know what that
Oh,
word is.
that's okay, because I didn't know either. Somebody used it with me and I was like, what's bathymetry? It's topography, but underwater. It's a different word, I don't know. So, our previous director made a comment to me once about not knowing if there was really any good bathymetrical data of the lake. We have a very rough bathymetry map on, it's called a GIS map online, but it's not super detailed. So like that might be something that potentially could be looked into in the future, is better mapping and publication of those maps so that people could have access to them, like, I don't know, Garmin, you could download the Utah Lake map or something so that you could actually have better data. That might be an option in the future that could potentially help with issues like that. But those were the 4 things that I hit on. The other 4 that I hadn't yet made some kind of progress on was extending the season for boat slips at the state park. That could potentially be something.
We've done that.
I've worked on that. Nice. I'll check that off, but I won't take credit for it.
Well, you can take credit.
Power available at the private slips. Any progress there?
We always talk
Okay.
about it.
Again, master plan is going to be a perfect opportunity because that'll be a real low-hanging fruit because that's not a high-cost project. It's just making it happen. Better lighting at the end of the jetties for Lincoln Beach. This is one I still think is important, but I'm pretty sure I mentioned last year that we want to do master planning with the county, and that can be included in the master plan to then justify doing it for them. And then the last one I think I had was just a note from Sean about trying to help additional funding sources for Windy Lookout, because I know he eventually doesn't want to have people pay for it, but he needs some way of funding it regularly to do that. So, are there other suggestions, ideas, thoughts about sailing or anything? I wanted to make sure I gave you guys an opportunity with me to bring up concerns if you have them. And I'm gonna shut that off just so that it's not still up. But yeah, your hand was raised. Go ahead.
How about a windsock out at the entrance?
A windsock, like out here at this entrance, you're
Well,
saying?
there's a windsock here, but out by the entrance, so we know.
Oh,
where-
out on the lake entrance.
Yeah, so when we're coming in, we have an idea where the wind, what the
Alright.
wind direction
That's
is.
probably an easy one.
Yeah, right? And there's already schools out there, right?
Well, that'll kill the bugs.
Anything we can do on that, right? Inadvertently. Other thoughts? Or even if you don't have an idea to fix something, even pointing out a pain point is helpful too.
Well, whenever I think of boater safety, I think of all the incidents we've had out on the lake where people have done things that are really dangerous and either almost collided with us, almost ran over their own children with their boats, or all sorts of things we've seen. And
It's those motorboat people, right?
it occurred to me that, you know, people that drive cars that are considered like a weapon, you know, have to have a license. You have to actually go to driver's training and, you know, take a test and
Mhm.
actually learn about the rules.
Yeah.
But like, they just kind of expect that you can, you know, if you're a certain age, you can, 16 or older or whatever, you can just drive a boat. And
Yeah.
it's really scary, like these boats are really heavy. And we had a boat.
And a lot of them go
about-
super fast.
Yeah, we had a boat about a year and a half or two ago. They weren't even watching what they were doing, and we were just sailing slowly by. And they decided that it would be fun to do figure eights with their towing their kids. And they weren't watching where they were going, they were kind of watching the kids, and they like came like this close to our boat. And that was really scary.
Sure.
Like, we had some horns on board that we like tried to alert them, but that could have been a major disaster. People could have gotten severely injured or hurt.
Yeah.
But also, the way that they were driving, they came really close to running over their own kids quite a few times. We've had a lot of jet skis that will go around and I think it's fun to torture the sailboats, and they'll like circle you or they'll stop dead in front of you and they'll just expect that you're gonna have to dodge them at some point.
Man,
Because some of those
neat.
are so nimble, right?
Yes,
If you don't have the wind
They
direction.
don't want to even pretend like they're out of gas.
It's their fault,
just
they'll
to-
get out of the way,
just
they
to
go pretty fast.
Cause us like
Who's
alarm.
bigger?
That's
Sure.
And unfortunately, when you're on a sailboat, you're subject to the wind, and even if you try to turn off, you might get hit with something else and
Sure.
go right into them and stuff. So my thought was, there's got to be something, might even have to be like statewide, for, you know, licenses of some sort, which would bring a lot of funds
Yeah.
into the state and everything.
So they,
Or training or
they
signage or
currently
something.
have a requirement for registration, right? They have boater education courses. They're not required by law. They're encouraged, and the state has one set up in partnership with the Coast Guard. In fact, you'll be proud of me since you brought this up. I did it because our agency recently acquired a pontoon boat in the fall. And I said, I haven't driven a boat in years. There's no way I'm taking this thing out with some training. So I did that one, and now I gotta go find somebody to actually teach me how to drive the thing. Because I agree, it's, you know, easily a weapon if you don't know what you're doing.
There's also,
So I think there's room to close out my point, I think there's room for trying to work with the Division of Outdoor Recreation, which oversees boating safety for the whole state. Their coordinator is Ty Hunter. I don't know if any of you recognize that name. He actually used to be the park manager here before my time. But I think there's room to work with Division of Recreation, Outdoor Recreation on increasing the awareness of those courses. Because if I remember correctly, I think it's not even expensive too. I think it's like $35 or something. It's a very low cost fee. And it takes, I think, 2 hours. And it gives a lot of great information. For instance, correct me if I'm wrong, but if I remember from my training I took 3 months ago, sailboats have the right of way always, 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 everywhere. Am I wrong? Where am I wrong?
Only for under sail.
almost.
If they're under
Okay, good clarification.
Right,
Thank you for
but
reminding me.
only
But to your point about jet skis and motorboats, they're not right, they're wrong, right? And most people don't know that. So I agree that there's an education deficit, and I think that falls really well within the water safety initiatives that we want to pursue. So I noted that one down. I think it's something we can definitely talk with them about.
If we go anywhere to like say rent, jet skis or a boat or anything, generally those companies will have us actually like watch a video, like when we went to Lake Powell, they actually had you watch a video
Oh, interesting.
about.
Oh, like the
state
rental
laws
company
and
you're saying?
everything.
Okay.
Yeah, and like, you know, you need to stay away by 150 feet from other.
Sure.
things,
Like
and
that.
all these things, and it's like, that was the first time I ever even knew about any of the
Sure.
laws. But then I was just so shocked at like thinking, most people don't even know the rules or the laws. They don't
Yeah.
know the right of way. They don't even know what the green and the red buoys represent the entrance of the exits of the marinas. Like they
When
come
I-
in the wrong ones.
The
They go
Coast
out the
Guard
wrong
Auxiliary
ones.
used to open up for a class.
They do still, it often has staffing issues, just with their challenges of having enough volunteers and interest. I actually want to do it. I tried to sign up, but they canceled the class.
Yeah.
Two
well,
boats are
But I
coming
think we could
together.
work with Coast Guard or DOR to do more in-person offerings. I think the Coast Guard used to regularly do it
Oh,
down
yeah.
here,
Well,
right?
You
Yeah,
can
I
go
did.
online, and take the state test. and
That's what I did. I took just the online portion.
And even
Sorry,
just like-
you were waiting so
Well,
patiently.
I just, you know, we have the regatta, it's only one time a year,
Mhm.
and I think Todd probably does that. You know, is there any chances that the state could get involved more with stuff like that? I mean, we love to race, and when they have the regatta, like last year, they have the, you know, the cardboard boat races
Yeah, the
and stuff.
cardboard boat
and
race,
it was
yeah.
a blast, I went over and watched them,
Oh,
and
yeah.
all the kids and stuff, they had a blast doing that.
I was the
We
lucky
only
guy
do
that lost his
We
voice.
do that one time during the year.
It was nice.
And I think that, you know, the younger generation, us older people, you know, that remember Geneva and the sludge and all that stuff, got, you know, we was taught that the Utah Lake was, yuck, stay out of it.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that they're changing that around, but the young people, you know, wouldn't it be nice to see a bunch of field trip come down here, buses pulling in there?
Have you not seen our spring field trips? You've been, Adam, haven't you?
They do.
We
they-
have 700 fourth graders in one day,
That's
and it's
great.
4 days in the spring they come down. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
But I agree with what you're saying. I'll note that down with our events manager of more family events. A little interesting tidbit for you though. I hope you don't take personal offense being one of the older people in the room. But our public perception research that we did last summer showed that it's actually the older generation that have lived here for a while that are poisoning all the new people, telling them not to go to Utah Lake. So this generation, I too, I grew up here in Utah County, right? Before I took this job, I've been here 3 times, and the most recent one was when I was a college kid in our singles ward, our church ward, and they brought us down, and I was like, oh, where are we going to go boat? He's like, oh, well, Utah Lake, I didn't think we were gonna be able to make it to Deer Creek, and I was like, well, what do you mean? He's like, well, Utah Lake's kind of gross, but it'll be all right,
Yeah.
right? So, we're trying to work on how to figure out from that research, how do we connect with the incoming people that are newer here to reinforce, because we actually figured out, it's, if I remember correctly, people who have lived here 1 to 4 years have the best opinion of Utah Lake. When you aggregate it, obviously you all been here longer and have a better opinion. But we're working on trying to figure out, okay, how do we tap into that and avoid the downhill that comes after that, right? Or that comes from the first year, because they hear it from somebody, but that 1 to 4 years, we found in that, and I think there was a follow-up question of like, have you been to the lake or how recently? Those 1 to 4 years are the ones who, once they finally went, they started experiencing the lake, right?
Yeah,
There was a hand.
we do a sail out once a year, you know, we go across the lake.
Yeah,
Once a
like
month,
monthly
I think.
sail out, and there's also the sailstis, there's a couple different sailing.
But it
And
was
the
so cool,
recreation
like-
users on the lake, you guys are the most organized for doing things in my
Like
opinion.
one time, there was 14 boats that went over there and spent the night, you know, and people from Saratoga Springs, they seen all these boats and they just came down to the docks and hung out and wanted to know what was it, you know, it was a great
Cool.
day. Yeah,
That's
it was
awesome.
really
We are
cool.
good advertisers.
Doesn't somebody order pizza every time on that? Somebody orders pizza at the dock, right? Yeah, I heard about that once. Sorry, go ahead.
I'm concerned about the lack of law enforcement. I
Oh,
know
sure.
when I was sailing at Willard Bay, we could contact the rangers. They would go out, arrest them, and impound their boat if they were drunk
Oh, okay.
and things. But if there's an emergency here, man, we
Yeah.
could lose people before they ever got a boat in the water or got somebody that operate the boats that are in the water. What's the problem with law enforcement? Why has that been cut?
So it's not that it was cut per se, although I think like we're seeing technically the cut here at Utah Lake. But what I mean by that is it was actually a restructuring of the entire Department of Natural Resources law enforcement. The way it worked previous to, it just became official January, but they've been doing the restructuring for the last year and a half. But it used to be that several of the divisions had their own law enforcement elements, so state parks, Division of Wildlife Resources, Division of Forestry, Fire and State Lands, DNR itself, the big department proper, and there was one other division. It wasn't water rights. Who was it? They have 12. It was one of the other divisions. They had their own law enforcement. And the unfortunate side effect was kind of a couple things. A lot of duplication. So like they had a boss of law enforcement at each of those divisions, right? Who then had to try and coordinate with each other across their needs. It also ended up allocating in some ways that was challenging across the divisions from what I've been told. I mean, we operate outside of DNR, so I don't know for sure. It's mostly from what I've heard from comments from people. So what they did is they created an entirely new division underneath DNR called the Division of Law Enforcement, and that's all they do. So they're split and shared across the divisions to service them. So you'd have to double check with Steve Wolf. I don't know the exact for here. We don't have a dedicated ranger at this park anymore, but we do have a ranger still that covers our area. So I think technically it didn't actually change at the lake, but he's not based here, which is why it feels like it's less. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
From what I understand. That said, I agree with your concern. I'm not sure what the solution is yet. My guess would be we could try and figure out what might need to change to bring like somebody within DLE, Division of Law Enforcement, or another route would be trying to lean on Utah County more. Or for instance, Saratoga Springs City, their fire department, right, has their own lake crew with jet skis and they train on the ice and everything, right? So I think it's going to have to be a paradigm shift in how law enforcement is approached at the lake. But I will add, so I noted it down and I agree with your concern. I will add though, personally, although there are some challenges with this shift, I'm actually excited about it for one main reason. The Division of State Parks across all of Utah, in my personal opinion, the park managers I've worked with across the state, because so much or so many of them were law enforcement, they viewed people as problems, not guests.
Sure.
And that's just Sam speaking, right?
Right.
That's not the authority
Right.
stance, that's not anything else official, but that's what I felt like I witnessed.
Yeah.
So I am hopeful, because state parks now gets to just focus on their park and their people. So I have high hopes, especially with Steve, we've had a good relationship to start, to really improve the park experience and let others focus on law enforcement. Now even Steve though has some opinions of frustration, right? Somebody, like, what was it that happened, the drunk that took out the restroom door or whatever? Josh was still law enforcement at that point, so they're able to deal with it, but like, Steve just has to call 911. He's not law enforcement. I mean, he can try and call dispatch too, and, you know, try and work some favors, but there is no law enforcement, right? So I think there is gonna be some pain points in the near future, but I'm optimistic for the change, for management of the lake, and I'm hopeful that we can find some other solutions. Like, I know Utah County last year bought a new, I don't know the word for it, it's a boat, but like, it's designed for,
It's probably broke. It's a very nice boat.
yeah, really nice boat.
Really
It's
nice boat.
designed for a lake like Utah Lake, right?
Yes.
And I know they expanded their jet ski fleet as well, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, it's parked right down there.
So I think there's some options out there, but I agree that it needs to be a discussion.
Or maybe you could deputize the sailors, give us
Yeah.
letters of marque.
I'll work with what's his name, Sheriff Smith, or whatever on that.
All you need is a plank.
I think one thing
they
that
can
needs
walk
to
the
be
plank.
mentioned is, there's a number of people in this room that we're out there sailing, sometimes we're out there all night. And a number of us have rescued. A number
sure.
of people when
Yeah.
the rangers are in bed.
Oh, totally.
And
And I've met some motorboaters who've done
And-
kind of the
and-
same thing too.
I think most of us are trained to be the lookout. There's many times I've gone, saw a boat sitting there,
Mhm.
and I've sailed over by it and said, hey, do you have a problem? Yeah, we can't start it. Melanie and I, these people were 2 miles out, no motor, no anchor, no paddle, no nothing.
Mhm.
And it was 10 o'clock at night.
I got was this last year? 2 years ago, I think. In the middle, it wasn't in the middle of the night, but it was like 6 o'clock on a Saturday or something. I got a Facebook message. somehow they had service enough, they messaged us and were like, hey, I'm stuck out on the lake,
Yeah.
I need help, and I was like, shit,
Call it, dude.
talk to me. I don't know what to do. So I think I ended up calling dispatch and just saying, hey, like, there's this part, well, and they were like, well, they need to get in touch. I was like, come on, here's their cell number, like, let's do something. And I think they ended up getting help.
Well, I know,
I agree with your point, but I'm wondering, somebody brought up with me in the past, it may have been Todd, or maybe it was, might have been Peter, about the fact that the VHF stations aren't monitored either. I don't know if that's the solution, but I think this is another, how do I say this, another facet of law enforcement slash rescue, to the point we're making right now, of trying to figure out how do we better connect people to get the information to the right person.
right.
And I don't know what that is, but there are so many different kinds of technology out there. There's gotta be somebody who has a solution for, I don't know, a way to have, if a VHF alert comes in, somehow the county gets pinged or something, right? There's gotta be a way to figure it out, but I think it needs to be, I'm gonna add that next to the law enforcement,
Well, I
because.
know at Strawberry, they tell you to call a friend.
Really?
Yeah, because, see, Strawberry has federal and state, and neither one's patrolling.
Sure.
Well, we-
And
They have boats there, but they're.
I think-
they're not people.
I think so far, why you haven't seen more of stuff like that, the law enforcement and also like the VHF radios or rescue, is because I feel like people are approaching with the wrong mindset. Meaning, they think, well, I don't have staff to do that, right? Like, we can't have, EMS and firefighters who are on patrol 24/7 available to respond. I don't think that's needed. To the point you guys made about the fact that you're already all out there, if there's a way that we can organize, so like, I don't know if this is probably a bad example, but like if there was a dedicated helpline that everybody who's out there knows they can call,
Right.
that forwards on to dispatch, right? So that any of you could self-report, kind of like what does KSL call it? Their traffic reporter, traffic troopers.
Oh, yeah.
That's just people driving on I-15 who are anal enough about traffic that they're willing to call KSL or text them and say, hey, there's an accident. And that's how KSL reports on them. They're traffic troopers. And I think there's room for some kind of crowdsourcing the idea, the solution in Utah Lake as well, would be my hope. So I really appreciate you bringing it up, and I think it's something that we need to work on. I think we have a couple of work groups that can look into that, and I think it's gonna need to be collaborative, but I think it also can be innovative in solution.
Well, I know Coast Guard Auxiliary did a good job, but they're just lean.
Oh, totally.
They're real lean right now
Oh,
on
very
being
much so.
able to come on the weekends and help and things and
Yeah.
stuff like that.
So on VHF radios right now, there's DSC, which is a digital calling service. And if that could be automated to dial the right people at the right time.
Sure, yeah.
I mean, that's what they do out on the coast. And so,
Yeah.
something could be happening on the lake.
And that's like too, like, I mean, we've got an app like Windy Lookout, if there's some way to marry it into the Windy Lookout system, like, or some other app, I think there's methods that could be looked at and just try and figure out which one works best. But I would hope that there's ways that we can utilize innovative technology and collaboration to accomplish more than trying to hire a dedicated search and rescue team for Utah, because that's just not gonna happen. But if we can help facilitate, right, getting the county search and rescue more equipment so that they're more readily able to get out there, right? If they need a new jet ski or they need a new boat or whatever, those are things that we can help with to try and supplement. And then I think we look at new technologies. Roseanne?
Yeah, I was gonna mention, Linden Marina,
Mm-hmm.
whenever the wind's coming out of the northeast, there's a strong smell coming from the Tenth Reclamation
Oh,
plant
the,
right
yeah,
there.
TSSD?
Yes,
Yeah.
and so that's a pain point.
Mm.
I had a few times last year, I had guests with me and sorry about that. It was better once we got out.
I don't really know what can be done about
So-
that. That's an
I used to work in an office building just north of there, and when the wind was
It's
from
the
the
same
south,
thing.
and there's nothing.
Yeah.
We never, 10, 15 years in that building, there was nothing.
And they actually have improved the smell a little
Yeah, a
bit,
lot.
meaning not from the waste, like the wastewater, but they used to also do, what's it called, like green waste recycling. And that also had a smell. Unfortunately, they didn't like the smell of it, the cities in the area, so they sued TSSD and shut it down. When I say unfortunately, I mean I used to use that green waste to take all my green waste because I wanted to not just take it to the dump. So that's the unfortunate side of it, but the smell technically improved a little bit, but I wholeheartedly agree with you. It also is unique because it's the only wastewater treatment plant close enough to open water that you really notice it that much. Because we actually have 5 that pump into Utah Lake. TSSD services 11 cities, and then we have Orem City, which is right off the Powell Slough. So hunters might notice the smell, but the water's far enough away that you probably be close enough. Provo has theirs. Who are the other 2? I think it's Springville and Spanish Fork, if I remember correctly. So it is somewhat unique that that's the one that's closest to the water and you experience that. But I agree, it's a pain point. I just think it's one of those kind of like the bugs that it's like,
So not all
I think I
plants
can
are
do
that
anything.
way. Plants don't have to be built that way. So.
no, there definitely
Right.
is, but
Other
the
than
fact that
say
it
that when they
exists
rebuilt
and
it,
how
they
much it
just
would
didn't-
cost to change it, I doubt they're gonna do it. Yeah.
So what is that? Is it a dump? Is it
Oh, it's a
water?
wastewater treatment facility, so all of our black water and gray water out of our houses is treated from 11 different cities on the north end of the county, is all sent to that plant. Treated, meaning all of the nutrients, the solid waste is removed from it, and then it's pumped into the lake. So if you ever look on Google Maps, right, between Linden Marina and AF Marina, you might see like a different color water. That's the treatment water coming into it, and people think it's polluting. I've actually literally gotten emails saying they're polluting the lake. It's actually because it's clear water, so you can actually see into the water, not that it's dirty water. It just looks weird on a satellite image. But yeah. Was there any other question, or I shouldn't say questions, any other pain points, anything like that we were hitting on with sailing? I'll take questions too. Okay. Thank you all, really, for your time.